You know, when we think about history's great figures, what usually comes to mind? Power, wealth, conquests, sure, but every now and then you come across someone remembered for something else entirely, something deeper, their character. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the life of a man whose entire legacy is built on one powerful idea: trust.
And this right here, this is where it all starts. I mean, just think about this statement for a second. It's not just a nice compliment, it's a title. It's the defining statement given by the Prophet Muhammad himself that would literally shape the entire life story of Abu Ubaidah ibn Al-Jarrah. This is the core of who he was.
Okay, so before we jump into the stories, let's just get the basic facts down to set the stage. His given name was actually Amir, but pretty much everyone in history knows him as Abu Ubaidah. He was born in Mecca, right there at the beginning of it all. What's incredible is that he was one of the 10 people promised paradise while they were still alive. That's a huge deal, and pay attention to how he died, the plague of Amwas, because that becomes a really crucial part of his story later on.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at where that incredible title, the Trustworthy of the Nation, even came from. Then we're going to see how his faith was tested, really tested, in the middle of battle. From there, we'll track his journey as a commander, see how he handled leadership during some massive crises, and then we'll wrap it all up by looking at the legacy he left behind.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth does a person earn a title like that? Well, it didn't start with him being a famous general or a governor. No, it started way earlier. It all starts with his character.
So Abu Ubaidah wasn't just some random guy. He came from a well-respected Quraysh family in Mecca. And even before Islam, people knew him. He had this reputation for being modest, fair, just a brave stand-up guy. But here's what's really key: his conversion. He became a Muslim just one day after Abu Bakr. Think about that. That puts him right at the very, very beginning, in that first handful of believers. And because of that, he faced the absolute worst of the persecution. He was so committed that he had to leave his home and everything he knew, not just once, but twice, migrating to Abyssinia and then later to Medina, all for his faith.
And that character, that foundation, it's about to be put through the ultimate test. Because faith isn't just about what you believe in your heart. It's about what you do when that belief is pushed to the absolute limit, in ways most of us can't even imagine.
Okay, so picture this, the Battle of Badr. It's the first major battle for the Muslims, and everything's on the line. But for Abu Ubaidah, it's not just a battle, it's an impossible personal crisis. Why? Because on the other side, fighting against the Muslims is his own father. And his father isn't just there, he's actively looking for Abu Ubaidah on the battlefield, trying to confront him. The accounts say Abu Ubaidah tried everything to get away, to avoid him, but his father just kept blocking his path, forcing his hand.
And in that impossible moment, Abu Ubaidah made a choice. He chose his faith over his family, and he struck his father down. Can you even imagine how gut-wrenching that must have been? This act was so significant that a verse of the Quran was revealed in reference to it. It just goes to show a level of commitment to God that went beyond even the most fundamental human connection.
His devotion showed up in other ways too, just as powerfully. A year later, at the Battle of Uhud, the Prophet was injured. He had 2 metal links from his helmet stuck deep in his face. Abu Ubaidah saw this and worried that trying to pull them out with his hands would just cause more pain. So what does he do? He uses his own teeth to grip the metal and pull. The first one comes out, and so does one of Abu Ubaidah's teeth. He doesn't stop. He goes for the second one, pulls it out, and loses another tooth. It's just this incredible act of love and sacrifice, one that literally left a physical mark on him for the rest of his life. So it's this kind of unwavering character that ends up defining him as a leader, right? When he's put in charge, people aren't just following his battle plans, they're following his integrity, his moral compass. And you can see his rise was pretty quick. By 629, he's already commanding an army that had both Abu Bakr and Umar in it, which is just, wow. A few years later, he's the supreme commander of all the Muslim forces in Syria. But this is where his character really shines through as a leader. At the pivotal Battle of Yarmouk, a massive, decisive battle, Abu Ubaidah recognized that one of his generals, Khalid ibn al-Walid, was a tactical genius. So what did he do? In an act of incredible humility, he just stepped aside. He handed tactical command over to Khalid. He put the army's victory above his own ego and title. That's true leadership. And this attitude never changed, not even when he became the governor of Syria, which was a position of huge power and access to wealth. Caliph Umar came to visit him one day and was absolutely stunned. He found the governor living in a simple little hut. All he owned was his sword, his shield, and a mat to sleep on. Umar's comment just says it all. The world has changed us all, except you. All that power, all that success, it just never corrupted him.
But, the true, ultimate test of a leader often isn't on the battlefield. It comes when you're up against something you can't fight with a sword, something like a famine or a plague.
So when a massive famine struck Arabia, Caliph Umar put out a call for help to all the governors. And who was the very first to respond? Abu Ubaidah. From Syria, where things were more fertile, he organized these huge caravans loaded with food and sent them straight to Medina. This wasn't just a kind gesture, it was a massive logistical operation that showed how efficient and compassionate he was. He almost certainly saved thousands upon thousands of lives.
But then, right after the famine, something even worse hit, the plague of Amwas. And we're not talking about a small outbreak here. This was a catastrophic epidemic that just tore through Syria. We're talking about an estimated 25,000 people dying, including many of the soldiers under his command.
Now this next part is a really fascinating moment in history. Caliph Umar hears about the plague and starts heading towards Syria. But he stops at the border. He makes the call to turn back, to protect the people he's with. And Abu Ubaidah challenges him. He asks, "Are you running away from God's divine will?" And Umar's response is so profound. He says, "Yes, I am running from Allah's will, but to Allah's will." He was establishing a huge theological point. Taking sensible precautions isn't a lack of faith, it's actually part of trusting in God's plan. But here's the crucial part for Abu Ubaidah's story. Umar was terrified for him personally. He sends him a letter basically ordering him to come back to Medina, a way to get him out of the danger zone and save his life. And Abu Ubaidah refused. He wrote back with this incredible message you see here. He chose to stay. He would not abandon his soldiers. He saw his own fate as completely intertwined with theirs. That's loyalty. That's leadership, right to the very end.
And that decision, of course, sealed his fate. He would not survive the plague. But even in his final moments, he made sure to reinforce the very principles that he had lived by his entire life.
As he lay dying, he gathered his soldiers for one last address. And what did he talk about? Not military tactics, not conquests. He talked about faith and community. He told them to establish their prayers, to fast, to give to charity. And then he urged them to stay united and to be sincere and supportive with each other. It was the perfect final chapter to his life, a summary of everything he stood for, devotion to God and service to his people.
And this is how the people around him saw him. Just listen to this quote. To be put in the same sentence as figures like Abu Bakr and Uthman, specifically for having the best character and being the most modest, that just says everything, doesn't it? It proves that his humility, his integrity, his trustworthiness, it wasn't just a title, it was real, and everyone who knew him saw it.
So the life of Abu Ubaidah really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? In our world today, we often measure leadership by fame or power or personal success. But his story gives us a totally different model. It's a model built on sacrifice, on deep humility, and on a trust that was absolutely unbreakable. His life forces us to ask ourselves, what does it really mean to be a leader, especially when leading means you might have to give up everything?